Hi everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'll be sharing how I created this card by using two different types of masking techniques. I'll be using the Linking Train stamp set as well as the Fadoodle Hearts stamp set. And the masking that I'm going to show first is how I got the hearts inside the little train car. And the second masking technique is how I got the pennants on front of the train engine. So I started out by stamping 3 of the hearts onto a piece of masking paper, and now I'm going to cut them out. A couple of tips and tricks. When you're cutting out your masks, you want to make sure that you're cutting really close to the stamped line, if not on the stamped line, just a little bit. By doing that, you'll make sure that when you're doing the stamping, you won't have any weird halos around the images. Now, the other tip that I wanted to share with you is how I do the fussy cutting. If you notice, my right hand with the scissors isn't really moving. I'm moving the masking paper with my left hand, and that helps get a cleaner edge around the images while I'm cutting them out. So once I had all of my little masks cut out, I brought in a piece of Cougar Super Smooth cardstock, and I stamped the train car with Memento Tuxedo black ink because I'll be doing some Copic coloring, although I did most of the Copic coloring off camera, just in the interest of time. The other thing I did off camera was I stamped the same little train car onto a sticky note, and I made sure to stamp it on the area where the sticky is, and then I cut it out as well. And I didn't have to cut the whole train out because I only needed to mask off the very top part of it, so when I stamp the hearts, they'll look like they're inside the train car. Now, the reason that I stamped the train car first is because I want that to be up front, and I want the hearts inside the little train car. I wanted 2 little hearts on the outer edges, and I wanted them to be in the front, so I stamped those first, and then I put the masks on top of those little hearts, and then I stamped the larger heart. I masked off the larger heart, and then I stamped another little heart. Then I moved to the other side and stamped a heart there. Now, I could have cut out a couple of extra masks, but I decided that for me, I'm okay with just moving the masks around. So I took the mask for the heart with the boulder line off and moved that up to cover the one that I stamped on top. And then I moved the other small heart mask to cover the other small heart that I had just stamped. And I just continued doing this until I had enough hearts in my little train car. I really didn't have a plan on how many hearts I wanted or how I wanted them. I was just kind of eyeballing it. The biggest thing, of course, is to remember to move the masks if you need to. After I had all of the hearts stamped out that I wanted to be inside my little train car, I removed all the masks. And that's how I was able to get the hearts inside the little train car. As far as the coloring goes, I wanted to specifically share the shading that I did for the hearts. I didn't want to use my R59 marker because I didn't want the shadows to be that dark. So I decided to do underpainting instead, and I brought in my B21 marker, and I added that in the areas where the shadows would be. So any heart that is behind another heart would have a shadow cast on it from the heart that is in front of it. So that's where I added that B21 marker. I did 2 different colors of reds for the hearts, just so there would be some variation. For the orangey red hearts, I used R17, R14, and R22. I'll have all of the Copic colors as well as everything else that I used listed down below in the description box for you. Now, the tip with the underpainting with the blue marker is when you come in to go over that blue marker with your darkest color, you want to make sure that you cover the blue marker entirely and also go past the blue. Then when you come in with your midtone, you want to blend over the blue and the darkest color a second time. That just helps get the markers to blend really well and give that, for lack of a better word, muddy look to get those darker shadows without them being too dark by using the R59 marker. So the next thing that I wanted to share is how I was able to get the pennants on front of the train engine. I put a piece of cardstock in my MISTI, and I put the train down on the cardstock just so I would have an idea of placement. Then I took the little stamp for the pennants and placed that on top of the train engine stamp. When I lifted the MISTI door, all I had to do was take off the train engine, and I knew that because the pennant stuck to the MISTI door, that it was going to stamp exactly where I needed it to be stamped. After I had stamped it, I covered the pennants with the mask, and again I used a sticky note for that mask, and I wasn't too picky about cutting all the way up to the little string of the pennants, because I knew that by the time I was done coloring everything, you wouldn't even really be able to tell that I didn't cut them all the way up to the very top of the string. So after I had that mask in place, I placed the train on top, and then I stamped on top of my mask. In the center, I don't know if you can see it, but I didn't get a very good impression around that middle pennant, so I decided to stamp the train a second time and add a little more pressure around that middle pennant to make sure that I got a nice clean impression. Then I removed the mask of the pennant, and now my pennants are on the front of the train engine. To color the pennants, I used the same R markers and RV markers, and I did do just a tiny little bit of the underpainting with the blue. I just alternated the colors on the pennant, so it was the orangey red and then the more pinky red color. Another thing that I did off camera was I did stamp the train tracks onto a piece of Cougar Super Smooth cardstock, and I colored those in with my Copic markers as well. And then I trimmed it down to a pretty thin strip just to have it at the very bottom of my piece of patterned paper, which I believe is from the Enchanted Kingdom pack. I have to double check that, but I'll make sure that I'll have the correct link down in the description box below. I trimmed down the patterned paper just a tiny little bit, so it's just slightly larger than 3 1/4 by 8 1/4. Next, I adhered my patterned paper to the front of my note card, which started out at 8 1/2 by 7. I scored it at 3 1/2 inches on the 7-inch side, so my finished card is 8 1/2 by 3 1/2. Once I had that adhered to my card base, I brought in my train and played with the placement of the train a little bit. And once I decided exactly where I wanted the train to be, I just used my tape runner again to adhere those into place. And that's it. That finishes up my video for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, we'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.